documenting the front lines of the AI revolution, the AI Rebels podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the AI Rebels podcast. We're very excited to have Tyler Hochman on with us today, founder and CEO of FORE Enterprise. FORE, among many things, as we were talking before the show, you're branching out into so many different things. It originally started right as more focused on HR, attrition, really digging in and using AI to tackle this problem. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Maybe Tyler, give us like your elevator pitch of FORE as it stands now. What's the big idea here?
Yeah, I can give you the elevator pitch about when we started. And then about a year ago, we made a pivot, and I'll give you the new elevator pitch. The first one is that we could predict when a business's employees were going to leave well before they themselves even knew they were going to leave. And as a result of those predictions, we could then create targeted intervention strategies in order to prevent them from leaving or to optimize around when and who is going to leave. And then a year ago, we pivoted and we still do that, but we also now are a solutions architecture firm that builds the end-to-end data pipeline necessary for tools like that workforce tool, but also for other AI-enabled tools.
Interesting. What led to that pivot?
Good. So a lot of our clients, would ask us, would be really drawn by that initial workforce technology, and then we go in and we say, okay, give us the data, because obviously there's a lot of data you need for that. And in that handover, we'd find out that most of our clients, being large Fortune 500 companies, hospital networks, did not have the data pipeline necessary to actually accomplish those analytics.
Yeah.
So then we're like, okay, well, so then they say, well, why don't you just go and build that for us? And we're like, okay, we'll do that first. And by the time we finish building it, we're a year into the contract, and we're like, why don't we just build this for people?
Oh my gosh. You're like, great. We'll sign you on for years to come. That's a lot of work though. Okay, well, maybe let's back up then and go, like, what led to that initial interest? Was it your interest in that attrition HR? What led to that?
Yeah, so one of the businesses I started in college was a quantitative analytics firm that serviced financial institutions. And what we found was that when we looked at a lot of like M&A deals, and we found that when you're trying to value a company, one of the things that's being discounted or not correctly accounted for in the market is the true cost of turnover and the cost of workforce associated with the company. So as a result of that, when I set out to kind of build a company or build this company, I wanted to address that. And I wanted to help businesses understand not only the true cost of turnover, but who is going to turn over and then how to prevent that turnover.
That's interesting. So what has been kind of like the most unexpected variable that you guys have identified as an early warning sign? Have there been any that stand out, or has it all been sort of more confirming what your pre-existing suspicions were?
There's a lot of like more technical variables that have to do with the variation of different metrics, and like the deviation of different metrics. There's obviously the funny ones, which are like, if you some companies actually know where they're and again, and I should caveat this with saying that the only data we collect from a business is data that the employees already know are being collected. So we don't actually go and. So as an example, if a company tells you they're not reading your emails, we don't go and read your emails. Like, it's only data that's already being collected. But some companies collect data like around, where are you taking your lunches, as an example, if you're on a campus style environment and you actually have to swipe your card and order lunch from these different places. And so there is some correlation in a company with a campus style environment about where they took their lunch and whether or not they're going to stay or leave.
Oh my gosh.
That's super interesting.
Wild. That's crazy. So what is it like? Can you walk us through from like high level, start to finish? You come into a company, they're like, hey, we have this attrition issue. We want to figure out what's causing this. And then what do you do? Like, what's that process?
Yeah. So a company will come to us and say, we think turnover is a problem. Most companies can't even define like the true cost of turnover, which is anywhere between 60 to 400% of an employee's annual salary, depending on their skill level and the amount of onboarding involved. It would be like if you had to replace Spencer, right, for this podcast, and really hard to find Spencer again.
Yeah. Impossible.
Especially this hair.
Yeah. I mean, that would take years. That would take years to replace that.
Exactly. So really expensive problem. So then the first thing we do is we actually help them define like what is their cost of turnover. And then once we establish that cost, we normally start, depending on how big the organization is, with a pilot group, anywhere between 100 and 200 people or department or, a building or so on. And then we go and we collect the data. We create a dashboard, and on that dashboard, you can see it by team, by department, by, whatever groupings you want, or by individual. And then it assigns them a ranking system of, how likely they are going to turn over from low, medium, high, and very high. And then corresponding, once it passes a certain threshold, like high to very high, we actually tell them the reason we think they're going to turn over and what to do to prevent it.
Super interesting. So in mapping out what to do to prevent it, what kind of work has gone into figuring out those solutions for customers? Has it all been just historical data from previous customers, like, tracking the individuals that you said were going to, leave and then were able to be retained, or what does the process look like there?
There's kind of three ways we do it. The first way is if the company has tried intervention methods in the past and actually collected the data on those intervention methods, but never analyzed it. That's probably the best place to start is, actually doing that analysis and saying, okay, as an example, we work with a hospital network who tried giving a meditation app to nurses. And we're convinced, nurses are saying they're burning, our nurses are saying they're working too hard. Well, why don't we give them this app and then they can meditate? Now they're going to be happy again. Did not work.
Yeah.
It was not.
Shocker.
Shocker there. It was not successful. And so so that's kind of the first place we'll start. The second place we'll start is we have a really cool group of advisors from Stanford and Wharton and Kellogg and all these different places who write a lot of research and on this topic. And so they're a really good starting place for. We consult them and ask them, where we think this problem of attrition is occurring and things to solve it. And then the third place is just training our algorithm on kind of historical attrition solutions, typical attrition solutions. Like as an example, the most well-studied one is the recognition problem. And people found that just recognizing an employee creates a 3 times reduction in their desire to turn over. And that just means like saying good job. It's literally as easy as that.
3 times reduction. That's crazy.
Brings to mind the old Office joke from Michael Scott where he's talking about like, how somebody goes into work, doesn't get an award and, kills himself. And it's always presented as a joke, but it is funny when you dig into it. Yeah, how much that stuff matters. I was training a customer support team for a while for my job, and yeah, I found similar things where the people who would stay the longest were the ones who we interacted with the most, and that's really what humans are looking for, is like those interaction and social validation. That's fascinating.
I'm curious.
So, go ahead, Jake.
I was just going to ask. Along these lines, because obviously each company's unique. You go in, you get their data, you train on you eat their data, and you decide, what does this look like now? What does it mean for you? At some point, do you think you'll have enough where you wouldn't even need to do that? Like, you're like, oh, you're this industry, you're this size of company, you got to fix these problems. You know what I mean? Like, could this turn into more of almost like you have a consulting arm as well? It's less the data, more let's just help you implement these best practices that we've discovered.
Yeah, it's a great point. We can already do that. And we do that for some businesses. Like we do diligence for certain firms when they're looking at an acquisition. And so we'll never actually get, the true company's data, but with enough information, industry, number of employees, location, all that kind of stuff, we can do that. It relates to our confidence interval, the confidence interval of the prediction, and then how it changes as you go multiple months out, right? So it's actually a lot easier for us to say an employee is going to leave next month than it is to say an employee is going to leave, then try to predict the more months you go out. So the employee is going to leave, in 4 months or 5 months or 6 months. And so the internal data gives us that breadth and to be able to say 6 months out, we're already identifying employees that are leaving versus, just a closer window. And it's all related to like a confidence interval. So we could still, even without the internal data, predict on a 6-month or 1 year window. It's just confidence is going to be less.
And I'd be interested to hear, are there industries that you have found are easier to predict than others, or are they all kind of about the same once you have the right data points?
Oh, no, there's definitely, it normally correlates to like how much data is collected on that industry. Well-regulated industries very regulated industries have a ton of data. Healthcare, finance are the two that come to mind. But then you even have like certain, government-related security jobs, government-related space jobs and space industries. These, very well-regulated industries just mandate a ton of data being collected.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Interesting.
Have you had any issues with companies? I imagine I remember in high school reading the Scarlet Letter, right? Where you have like the red A on your chest. Like, is there any impact where you come in and you say like, that one, they're all leaving in a month in the company? Have you had any issues with them like signing off these employees almost and like treating them poorly rather than trying to help them stay? Has that ever been an issue?
Yet, I think you're raising a valid concern, which is once you know whether someone's going to stay or leave, that additional information, I'm certain, does impact, the way you're going to approach it because you just didn't know before. To the point that it makes them treat them worse, so to speak. I'm pretty confident it doesn't, just because the status quo is they're leaving. So if anything, you're not.
I see.
You potentially run into the problem of not treating them better, but you certainly are not going to treat them worse, because if you want them to leave and they're already leaving, you're just going to continue doing exactly what it is you
Right.
did.
Yeah. I imagine like this employee is going to leave in 3 months. And I just have this scene of like, you're pretty confident that they're going to leave, but they don't even know it yet. And you're like, you dirty, like, I know you're going to leave.
Just seething in every single one-on-one.
I'm so mad at you. They're like,
It's
what
like when your
happened
wife
to our
has a
relationship?
dream about you cheating on her or something like that.
Yes, like just mad at you for a week. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Well, I guess that brings up an interesting point, like, because this is a concern a lot of people have with AI is, at what point are we morally, like, what are the morals here with being able to see the future? You're like I am 90% confident you will be leaving. I think that scares a lot of people that AI can do that. How do you address those concerns when, I don't know if anyone's brought that up, but I'm curious what you would say to that.
No, it has been brought up. We have metrics in place. There's two kinds of metrics, safeguard metrics we have in place. The first one is like, we always want to make sure that our AI isn't contributing to systemic biases, with the company. And so and this is kind of also to the second one, but I think ultimately, and to answer your question and then come back to this, which is it's information, right? Like, information can be used positively or negatively, but I am always a fan of more information is better. Like, you should never hide away from the truth. You can choose to confront the truth either way, but like, facts are facts, information is information. Yeah. And so that's kind of how we approach it. And so we create the safeguards, but you can use information, each way. You can take it good or bad.
Yeah. Crazy world. It's just,
so
it's what kind of, go ahead, Spence.
You brought up bias, and so I thought that was an interesting segue to asking you, are there any specific safeguards that you use to reduce the bias? You mentioned that, you do use some certain safeguards to reduce systemic bias in companies. Are there any of those that kind of stand out in being interesting to talk about, I guess is the question I'm asking?
Yeah, I think there are the usual biases, that come from like race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, location, those types of things. I'm trying to think. There's the age bias, I think, is always fascinating in tech. And one that I actually think is not talked about enough. Going back to The Office, there's a great Office episode where Michael is going to sue Dunder Mifflin for ageism. Now I think it actually really does apply to tech. So, coming full circle here.
That's kind of true, yeah.
Yeah,
that's a very good point.
And the safeguard, just generally involves actually having real-time metrics. Like, again, our metrics, aren't necessarily the biggest thing we're offering is predictive versus like retrospective. And so it's not like
Yeah.
you can't see who has turned over and then look at the relative associations with that turnover. It's just that now we're predicting for the future and making sure that you're staying ahead of those biases.
Makes a lot of sense.
I love that. You've mentioned data a lot, obviously. That's the lifeblood of all AI. How do you determine, when you come into a company, how do you determine good data? Like, how do you know if this is going to be worthwhile?
Yeah, it's actually a really nice segue into the fact that like that's kind of the reason FORE pivoted away from just workforce and focusing almost more on the solution architecture and the pipeline itself, because businesses right now are being tasked with like, AIify my business, and everyone's trying to create these really cool AI tools, in order to do that. And both from a B2B perspective, a B2C perspective. And I think what's being undervalued is the data, right? It's the way that data has to be ingested. It has to be structured and streamlined. It has to be stored, and then it has to be ready to then power these AI-enabled tools.
Yeah.
And it's, and not only is it being underestimated from a, labor standpoint, it's being underestimated from a cost standpoint. Like it's still very expensive to accumulate large amounts of data, to store that data. And so, yeah, I mean, OpenAI only works because it's literally burning billions of dollars. I mean, now you've got DeepSeek, got these other places competing with it, but it's literally burning money. Like it is not a cost-effective solution, not even close as it stands right now. And so I think people that's where I've noticed a disconnect. And actually we turn away a lot of business because we're like, this does not make sense for your business. You don't have enough cash flow. It's really an expensive endeavor to do it. We're an expensive firm. And it just doesn't make sense. It's too expensive for your business.
Yeah. I think people really do. I mean, data, if you think of the way I think of AI sometimes is like a brain, right? Where if you took a human and you took all their memories away, like could they do anything? Not really. And then if you even got like less extreme, right? If you just like took out some key memories throughout their life, like they just would become less and less authentic and less human. And it's the same thing with AI, where like if you don't have good data, that's the AI's memories. That's its brain. That's all it knows. And so if you're companies want all these solutions. We're seeing this so much. We talk to all kinds of companies, right? And everyone's having this issue with data. It's like, look, really cool idea for a tool. You can't do it. Like you don't have the data here to build this, which is discouraging, I'm sure. What do you tell like, do you just say no, or do you kind of say, hey, this isn't right for you now, but start doing these things with your data and maybe in the future? Like what would you tell a company that was struggling with that?
I would say that, it's a function of cost. Data is acquirable. So it's just you either are you have it's a zero sum game with dollars. And so you have a finite amount of resources to allocate in different ways. Assuming you have a revenue base and a cash basis that could even support it, in the first place. The first place to start is like, do you even have enough cash basis to support this type of endeavor? If you do, is this how you want to allocate your dollars? And if it is, yes, we can go and acquire the data most of the time necessary to build what you want. That being said, like it's, even something as simple as a chatbot, right? That is specialized to a specific business still requires you to go and actually vectorize a database, put all these embeddings on top of it. And then you go and you have to, store it and host it. And then you go and actually use it to the chatbot. And, most people don't know that. They're just like, no, I want this thing that talks to me. I want to answer service questions.
Like, don't know if you understand. Totally. Yeah. 100%.
And so I'd be curious to hear, could you just kind of walk us through the flow of how your tool works a little bit?
Yeah. So we essentially have created proprietary ways to ingest data. Are you talking about our pipeline tool or our workforce tool?
Let's hear both. Yeah, let's start with the pipeline.
Yeah,
since that's what we were just talking about.
Yeah. So on the pipeline, we create a proprietary way to ingest data at like what we think is a pretty cost-effective, within a cost-effective model. And that uses all different types of techniques like sampling techniques, clustering techniques. And so you can actually ingest less data than you were initially thinking you were going to need to ingest. Then from the structuring and streamlining perspective, we use a lot of AI there. I actually think if you ask me, like, Tyler, what is the thing that you think AI does best right now? My answer would be in structuring and streamlining data.
Really?
It's doing mapping, right? Like, I think, this agentic stuff, there's a bunch of stuff coming out that's going to be very cool. And what it actually knows to do best right now is like mapping. You give it something and then you tell it, to make it this thing look like this thing. And it's really good at doing that. It actually does that really well most of the time. So that's where we use a ton of, different AI and AM models. Then we have a proprietary way of storing it and hosting it, so it's cost less. And then ultimately we feed it into, any type of tool. And then it's an example of one of those tools would be a workforce tool that we have. And that tool intakes the data. It goes through our different predictive algorithms that take into account all these different input variables, both internally from the company, but also externally from everything from census information, to demographic information, all that kind of stuff. And then we output that dashboard that I was talking about.
I'd be curious to hear, do you think that there is, because obviously right now a hot topic in AI in general is synthetic data. Do you think synthetic data could ever have application in something like this that is so reliant on, real world historical data? And as a follow-up to that, if so, do you feel like you have hit the point where you might start doing some of those experiments?
Yeah, man. I would say, synthetic data offers very interesting opportunities at a cost perspective. One of the things that, like, we champion is trying to get that cost down for a lot of our clients as much as we can. So I think it's very interesting from a cost perspective. In terms of, have we hit that point yet? It's definitely something we've explored, especially as you try to build like front end solutions and you want to test them. You don't have the time or the resources to go and actually allocate to getting the data. So yeah, it's something that we've explored before.
Interesting. You mentioned, this is kind of going back, but you mentioned you have all these experts and scientists from all these leading organizations involved here. Has there been any really heated debates that people have had about we need to do it this way, we need to train the AI differently, it needs to focus here, anything like that?
Jacob, you want the drama, don't you? You want to
spill the tea, bring it out.
You want some drama here. Another guy. I mean, I'm a big Office guy. It's another good Office episode where Andy's like, I don't want the drama.
Yeah. Bring it on.
Yeah. Well, what's funny too is like a heated debate between two professors and like one of our lead engineers is the calmest debate you've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anchor shift might be the most aggravation you get. But yeah, I mean, there's I think there's a lot of debate going into causal analysis right now. We've consulted with the professor at Stanford who, just won a Nobel Prize in economics for it. And it has to do with understanding functionally the root cause of the reason. And in our use case would be the root cause of why someone is going to turn over. And then, the actual intervention strategy to preventing them from turning over. Because there's so many correlative variables that it's just really hard to say. And so that's one of the things I think we do well is doing that analysis to really understand this is the attributable variable and not, all these clusters and noisy variables.
Was there a key, like something learned from that professor that has really impacted your AI algorithm? Like what did he tell you that helped you zero in on the crucial causal factors there?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, it's not anything flashy. It's more like technical ways to screen out noise.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think it's the drama you were looking for, but yeah.
No, that's great.
That was, a lot of the insight we got.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sure that's very complicated. We had on the show this other organization who use AI to basically take world events, right? The eggflation, right? Egg prices going crazy. They take that and they use AI to dig in, go explore the entire internet and figure out what actually is causing it, right? If you go to CNN, it's going to say
these
something.
really complicated ontologies and knowledge maps. It's super cool.
Huge. But it's like, I mean, you just have no idea what it takes to figure out the cause of something. Let alone when humans get involved like this, like I'm amazed that you're able. What kind of I don't think we've even asked this. What kind of a result do your customers see in attrition levels?
So they see what we describe as like optimized attrition levels, which, natural attrition is good. You actually want people coming and, coming, staying, leaving a business. At the same time, you don't want runaway attrition, and you actually don't want too low of attrition as well, because then you don't have that natural
Interesting.
attrition anymore.
Yeah.
And so they see an optimized attrition. So they essentially get to pick how much attrition they want, assuming they're willing to do the intervention.
I'd be curious, have you seen like a kind of a general level of attrition that most people sort of settle on, or is it pretty unique to each business?
It's pretty unique to each business. Like if you're, a business that's in a period of rapid growth, as an example, you probably will have a lot of attrition just because as a result of growing so quickly, you naturally are not a stable organization. That being said, you don't really want a lot of attrition because you want to maintain your workforce to grow faster. And then conversely, on the other side, if you're a well-seasoned organization, you might actually be, with plans and processes in place, the cost to onboard someone might actually be a lot less expensive. So you're okay with some attrition, but you actually don't have that many, and so ultimately it just depends. It really depends on where you are, what industry you're in, all those different factors.
Interesting.
Wow. Okay. Are there any other pivots in the future, or are you just digging into this one for now? Because that's big. That's a big shift.
We're digging. I mean, ultimately, this one became like a priority for us to even do the workforce analytics. And so we were more than happy to kind of be here. And I mean, we get to, what I love about it is like I have a natural urge to, I've started a number of businesses now and to kind of continue to start businesses. But what's cool about this one is data pipelines look the same no matter what business you're in. So we actually get to touch a lot of different businesses, everything from work with a fashion startup to we work with financial institutions, to we work with
cool.
PR companies.
Yeah.
We're getting to touch a lot of different things.
Yeah, that's
I'm
fascinating.
curious, do you ever work with anybody in like the fast food or the restaurant industry?
So we have not touched the fast food or restaurant industry in a really in-depth way. We've done due diligence projects on those. One of the interesting results we found that was in conjunction with another project we did for a large retailer is the true cost of part-time turnover, which we found as it related to this specific retail organization was more costly than on a percentage basis than their full-time turnover, which was a really interesting insight for them.
Yeah, that's part of why I asked, because I was just thinking about it like that. That's an industry with a ton of natural turnover already, just because the jobs kind of suck to work.
Yeah.
And so I was curious if there was anything else hidden in the numbers. That's really fascinating to hear. I wouldn't have guessed that, actually. I would have guessed that their processes are generally optimized enough now to churn through employees the way they need to.
Right.
Well, and it's also, again, it's on a percentage basis. So like the output, and the reason for it is like, if you can get decent output from a part-time person on a, cost to utilization benefit, like the cost is really low. And so as opposed to a full-time person. And so when that person turns over, although the total output might be less than a full-time person for the good ones, at least, because you're not paying them that much, it really hurts. And so it was the part-time turn was very expensive for this organization.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Tyler, if it's not too proprietary, from all the data you've analyzed, if you could give 1 to 3 suggestions to any company if they want to decrease attrition, what advice would you give?
Well, yeah, I'll give you even the way to the most correlative factor we've seen first on how to identify it and then how to address it. In terms of how to identify it, and again, there's no one answer. I want to preface it with that. The reason that AI exists is because it has to synthesize a ton of data, but the most correlative factor would be your schedule variation. And so if you looked at the time at which you do any task, right? Come or leave work, open up, do your first, do your second task, whatever they may be. And there's a ton of variation in that on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis. That's we've noticed it's a high indicator of turnover. What to do to retain that person is the strategy, the blanket strategy I would give for anyone is what we talked about earlier, which is the recognition strategy. Go and sit down and do a one-on-one and say, you're doing a really good job. You're valued at this company. It's shocking how much that will decrease a person from leaving. The second strategy I would give is a scheduling strategy, and that most people, businesses have a lot of things that they consider. And so one of the ones that is sometimes underconsidered is the schedule of the business optimized on a individual basis, right? And obviously certain businesses, it's easier to make it more optimized on an individual basis as opposed to other businesses. But I do believe that every business should still try to do it in part. Now, whether that even means, am I offering a lunch break at the right time? Is my lunch, does someone like to eat early? Do they like to eat late? Actually fine tuning their
Yeah.
schedule to allow for that really goes a long way with people.
So
To your point,
sorry, go ahead, Spencer.
just a quick anecdote. To your point, I have the problem of perpetually being late no matter where I go. So I was working this job where I was always consistently just 10 minutes late to my shift. And my boss was sick of it. So one day she sat down with me and she's like, all right, listen, we're just going to push the official start of your shift back 10 minutes. Solve the problem.
But then were you 10 minutes late for the 10-minute late start time?
No, actually, I just kept telling myself, the original shift start time, and that worked.
I know. I was going to say, you should have just told her, you shouldn't have told me that. You should have just done that for your head.
Yeah, exactly. You guys should have done that on your side and left me out of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's very interesting. Shocking, like how simple some of the solutions are with like, just talk to the people. Was I understanding right? Maybe it's just me being slow here. Were you saying flex? So like if a company has lots of flexibility, so you can do the work whenever you want, right? Let's just go extreme. Like you can do your own schedule. Do you think that would decrease attrition or increase attrition?
It would decrease attrition substantially.
Okay. So that flexibility for someone, if someone can do the work when they want to do the work, it decreases attrition typically.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it doesn't even have to be as drastic as, some person works at morning, some person works at night. Just as simple as, you're like to Spencer's story, right? You start 10 minutes later, or your lunch break, instead of being at 12, it's going to be at 12:30 because you like to eat a little bit later in the day. It's like minute. And that's why I actually think what was so appealing to a lot of businesses in the workforce space is it's the intervention stuff is pretty hard. Like especially if you try to get like very custom tailored interventions, and it's also expensive. What was cool about FORE, which most businesses can't do, is actually identifying someone before they're going to leave. Like we believe it's not that difficult to keep someone. You may still lose them. You may try, you may do all our strategies, you may still lose them. What's difficult for most businesses is it's called silent turnover, right? They have no idea someone was even thinking about leaving. And then the person just leaves and then they're caught off guard. And so that's what we were trying to do, is give the knowledge and the info so that doesn't happen. And then the recommendation strategies themselves were highly effective, but you could get pretty far with just a general recognition or schedule tailoring strategy.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I like it a lot because it's having been in both, like, position of an employee and and in management. From my experience from the management side, a lot of the problem was not that, like, you necessarily didn't know what you had to do for a particular employee, but more that, like, you yourself didn't have the bandwidth to do anything. So it's really cool to see solutions arriving in the marketplace, that kind of push those responsibilities to higher up to, to people whose bandwidth is dedicated to solving those problems, and you can focus on other aspects of your job. I think that's really powerful.
That is. If we go broad, I'm curious, Tyler, you mentioned how you've started, we always do a little snooping when we have someone on. We go, look, and you've started lots of companies, you've been involved with so many different things. Obviously, you have a knack for identifying opportunities. FORE is a great example of that. You started with HR, and then you're like, oh, here's an opportunity. We're going to dig into this data. Is there something on your mind right now, or something you've thought about where you're like, man, AI applied to this would crush it, or would do whatever? Like, have you thought of any ideas like that recently?
Yeah, I mean, I can't name the sport or the team, but I can just say that in sports, there's a lot of cool opportunities for AI, both from a scouting perspective, from identifying talent before it reaches maturity, and then from a developing talent perspective, and then from a optimizing for victory and for wins perspective.
Yeah,
we're doing some cool work in sports. One I can talk about that's really cool is we work with a fashion company that is creating an AI stylist. And so, if, kind of pick out the optimized beanie for Spencer, would be this company's forte.
Let me know. Yeah, let me know when they launch.
Probably just send you
One
the
thing,
same green Quicksilver beanie.
You already optimized it, man.
This guy looks good.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're seeing some cool stuff there. We're seeing a really cool stuff in the M&A markets as well, where we work with financial institutions in identifying companies that are, ripe for M&A activity. These places where large amounts of data exist, and this is stuff that can't be done by an individual person.
Yeah, because hearing you talk about this,
Oh, I was just going to say, I have wondered, to the note of sports, I've wondered how long it'll be until sports start making regulations around use of language models during the game. Because it's not going to be that long until, somebody sitting in the box at a football game can be pointing a camera at the field and in real time have an LLM telling, oh, that's a blitz package, or, cover two, right? Like, it's not going to be that long. And I wonder what kind of, sport and cultural regulations will develop.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also how do you even regulate that? Like how do you track all that? It's going to be fascinating.
Well, it's going to be, I don't know if you guys are into or you've talked with people into the whole education, AI education space, but I find it super cool that the way, AI and LLMs are assisting, studying and learning and then functionally cheating, and then how people develop detectors of that cheating, and then, and then someone's trying to develop a humanizer for the thing. And so it's like a war, right? It's like,
it truly is.
Look like.
Yeah, it truly is. And it's like micro wars going on in each industry.
Yeah.
And it's also fascinating to see, you mentioned education. We had a professor on, and it's interesting how people also just get around it. We asked him what do you do with AI cheating? He's like, I just tell them to use AI. Use it, more power to you, use the tools available to you. He's like, there are a few things where I'm you're not going to have it in the test, so you need to know X, Y, Z. But he just kind of beat the system by not playing. He's like, just use it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting more and more, the regulation in all the spaces. I was curious, you mentioned all these different applications, sports, all these different things, because hearing you talk about FORE and the way you've applied it to HR and attrition, it seems like you've just kind of built a model that you could replicate for data ingestion, causal, figuring out the cause, and here's a prescription. Do you anticipate duplicating this now with okay, here's our HR package, here's our sports package for talent acquisition. You know what I mean? Is this something you're going to keep doing?
Yeah, exactly. I think that, and then if you describe it more holistically, all the way from the pipeline to the tool itself, that's exactly how the business has evolved and what we're going to go do. And we can do it, we can do it across a bunch of different industries. It's pretty industry agnostic.
So I'd be curious to hear, obviously the creator economy, as much as I kind of hate that term, it's taken hold, continues to grow. Mr. Beast is a corporation, right? He's got a whole get up behind him. Have you ever looked into doing work in that industry at all? I'd be curious to hear if you have, and if there's anything interesting, anything unique about it.
Yeah, we work with a large PR company. So it's kind of adjacent to that industry because they track a lot of, what creators are doing and how it affects brands. And, we've created some pretty interesting recommendation models for this company to use with brands, where they can recommend marketing strategies and creator strategies for brands to hit their certain goals. But yeah, I think that's pretty much as close as we've touched it. But I think there's a lot of room. Jacob was telling me earlier how you developed an AI agent for, it seemed for a meme coin.
Yeah. That was fun to do. That was a good time.
Crazy.
Oh, man.
Let me think. Okay. I actually wanted to ask this. I can't believe I forgot this. We hear, obviously, it's everywhere. It's in the news. It's everywhere. AI is going to take our jobs. We're not going to have jobs in the future. Everyone's terrified. Your company's positioned in a unique place where you're literally helping people keep their jobs with AI. What are your thoughts on the future of AI, humans working? Is it actually going to take jobs? Is it going to create more than it takes? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I equate AI with something synonymous to, in the most like fully flushed out example, maybe the telephone. Communication that was previously took place in the old days by like pigeon and then by actual
Yeah.
people, and then ultimately by a technology. And now we've kind of seen the full effects, right, of a telephone. you know, I am sure people were displaced by the telephone. That being said, I didn't actually view it as like this majorly disruptive tool to the workforce. I kind of view AI the same way. Are people going to be displaced by AI? Absolutely. But I don't see it as, at least right now, as it is offering efficiency gains to businesses. And so businesses can now reduce their workforce as a result of making each employee able to work faster and smarter and harder. That is actively happening. Is it like completely, like the way that Uber kind of got rid of taxis? Like, no, I don't think it's to that effect.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the long term effects. And anecdotally, I've seen a lot of people use it to start their own side hustle, whether that's just, they've used it to bounce business ideas around until they find one that they want to try, or it's, something surrounding AI specifically. And I'll be curious to see if that's more like just an early mover type of dynamic, or if that's something that we'll see continue to replicate itself as it becomes more and more widespread. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and to that effect, like I heard this recently, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I thought it was interesting that someone told me that like dollars have never gone to zero as fast as they do now as a result of AI, amongst other things, also culturally, people just trying to build businesses so quickly. Like everyone's trying to build a side hustle or a business. And as a result of that, a valuation of a business, like businesses have money and then don't have money at a faster rate than has ever existed before.
Crazy. Yeah.
Or vice versa, didn't have money and now have money.
And also you get this funding.
Yeah.
Money's flying all around both ways, negatively and positively.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy, man. Well, Tyler, as we wrap things up, I'm curious, you've started companies. FORE has been extremely successful. We have lots of listeners that are trying to do what you've done. They're trying to find an idea, build it, integrate, like use AI in this process, an AI tool, whatever it is. What advice would you give to these people that are trying to build something like this?
Yeah, there's kind of two pieces of advice I would give. The first one is, I think to start a successful company in general, you have to be what I describe as like irrationally confident, and so you will have a lot of reasons that it won't work. And by the way, like the irrational part is that if you tried to justify it on like a board, the con column would be much larger than the pro column. But you still have to persevere, right? You still have to be like, I'm going to do this just because you are confident in your ability to execute. And then the second one is to identify a problem that's extremely annoying. Like in your own, personally, in your own life, in your business life, in other people's business life, that you just find this like problem persistently annoying. And it could be as small as, adding a leg to a table, and as large as, adding a chatbot to the world's largest service center, because every time you call in, you have to wait 30 seconds instead of having to wait 5 seconds, right? And so something that you just find very annoying and is personal to you, I think is a great place to start a business.
Love that. That's great advice. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. If people want to follow you and FORE, what are some socials? What are the best ways for them to keep
Yeah, we're at foreenterprise.com. And then we have a LinkedIn on foreenterprise.com. We keep our news up and all the things that we're doing. We publish case studies and things like that. And then on our LinkedIn, we keep that active as well. So would love to, connect with anyone who's interested.
Perfect. We'll drop links. Thanks for coming on, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.